Hey everyone, welcome to the Masks Off podcast, the only podcast on the internet where you can find all of us. We've got a slightly smaller cast tonight, no special guest this week, but we've got me, we've got Alex, Camden, Dallin, and Keelhn. But before we start the show, I felt it was pertinent to make a statement on some of the recent events and kind of our role in talking about them. Every member of this podcast, those here tonight and those who have been on the podcast in the past, have led different lives and have different backgrounds. To me, this is one of the best parts about this format and something that I treasure in each of every person who participates with us. As such, we all have very strong feelings about what has gone in the world since our last podcast. However, I don't feel like it is our place to talk about these things because this is a gaming podcast and a gaming news podcast first and foremost. We don't want to be in the business of political hot takes and spreading our personal beliefs about complex issues that we simply don't have the time and resources to adequately cover. That being said, while we will not be in the business of covering this news, I think it is fair to say that every member of this podcast is against hate in any form. Members of this podcast have experienced prejudice firsthand, and even those who haven't are all against hate and prejudice, whether it is about race, sexual orientation, disabilities, or anything else. So while we will not be covering these issues, that does not mean our podcast is a haven for that kind of behavior and speech, whether in the live chat, the comments, or anywhere else. This podcast is meant to be a fun and safe outlet for both us on the podcast and anyone who chooses to listen, and we will always work to maintain that. But with all that kind of more serious stuff out of the way, let's get to the main part of the show. Let's start with a topic I'm really excited to hear, and that's the release of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. But before we talk about the remake, let's turn back the hands of time and discuss how Monolith succeeded or failed the first time around.
Which first time around are we talking about?
The original Xenoblade, obviously.
Okay, so we're not going like all the way back to Gears.
No, we're just with Xenoblade Chronicles 1, and then we'll maybe talk about X and 2.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. So who's played the original one? Because I haven't.
Not I.
Has no one here played the original?
Okay, well there goes that.
Okay. I've had like many of my friends say stuff about it, but I haven't played it myself because, well, I'm not really qualified to play a Xenoblade game because all I played was 2, and I'm gonna play. I would rather play the regular Xenoblade first before I play the. That's just the way I see it. I don't know. Alex, I thought you played, didn't you?
Yeah. So I've played all of them except the Wii. So my first experience is X, and then 2. So I've played the series just completely out of order. No, but like I liked both of them. I have a weird relationship with X because I bought X thinking it was a shooter because it was before I played JRPGs. Up for a rude awakening.
Bro, it has Blade in the title.
Okay. Your point, it also has guns and all of the promotional material, as well as a whole bunch of sci-fi mechs. And, like, blades are only, like, half of the game. But, anyway. I haven't gotten very far in it, but, I do enjoy it. 2, I beat, like, recently, and I love that game. It's, like, one of my favorite games on Switch. I fucking love 2. And going back to see where the Xenoblade started was very educational to show just how bad 2 was. No, it was. Whew, 1 is a lot better than 2, or at least Definitive is. The story is a lot better. Rex from 2 feels a lot. I don't know. It feels very like classic anime protagonist. Like, oh, I'm just, I'm wholesome, good-hearted boy with no sins whatsoever. Shulk's like, I just want to kill a guy. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean,
it sounds really familiar. Shulk.
I mean, it's I don't know. Shulk, I felt like had so much more time put into his character. Like he's not Rex in comparison is just so boring. Like Shulk just has like he's a scientist. He has like a reason for wielding the Monado. He his quest isn't just some I'm gonna save the world. It's a lot more I don't know, like relatable. He's trying to avenge. I don't want to spoil.
It's a bit more
anything, 'cause
grounded than Rex's
Yeah.
journey.
That's a good way to put it. It's much more grounded. It's a lot more relatable, I think. Besides the fact that Shulk looks like me, but that's besides the point.
I
You
kinda
wish you looked like
in
Shulk.
this picture. What do you guys think?
Oh my
What
god.
do you guys think? Like the
Nah, dude, he's
picture?
blonde hair, blue eyes, just like me. Just give me the Monado, boys. I'll be taking out the Mechon all the
Blonde hair,
time.
blue eyes.
Yeah, blonde hair,
Anyway.
blue eyes. Anyways,
Anyways, I apologize. Sorry, I'm just
You wish
basically
you were
going
Shulk.
into full review. I'll try to do it like short because I think I'm the only one who played definitive.
I'm trying to play definitive, but it's not working out.
yeah, no,
I do apologize. I'll keep it short. Battle system. Basically, a lot of the stuff in 1 I like more. The story I like more. The worlds I feel a little bit, or like the land. I haven't gotten far in 1 yet. I just got, or I'm in Grander Plane right now. And so that's for context. Right now the lands seem a little bit smaller than Xenoblade Chronicles 2's like Titans, which isn't a bad thing. The side quest system can be a little annoying. Like you'll just stand there and have to talk to one guy 4 times like in a row just to get all of the side quests out of him, which isn't something I like. But besides that, not the worst thing ever. Battle system, I like it. Hot take, I liked 2's more. I liked 2's a lot more, and it may just be me liking action games.
I may disagree with you a bit, but
Oh no, like I feel like I can see the disagreement. Again, I'm not that far into it, and I'm still kind of getting the hang of 1 while I have like 4 years of experience on 2's. It's just I don't know. One's a lot heavier on positioning, which I like because it feels like there's an actual purpose to movement. As 2 kind of felt like movement was just there for no reason. But at the same time, putting the arts on the D-pad while having to move around with the same thumb is a little bit hard to do. Like, I don't know, there's a disconnect there for me. And it feels like I have to move, stand still, then use an art. Well, I feel like it'd be like the game is built around being able to quickly kind of push those arts out to be able to kind of juggle as many enemies as you can. Controller rebinds kind of fix that. I saw a great one where you can basically put ZR and ZL on the 2 left and right D-pad. That kind of fix it. And I've been trying that out as of like an hour ago, and that's been working pretty well. And then other than that, I pretty much. Oh, and the voice acting's better. Oh my god, the voice acting is better.
yeah, anything. I've never been really a big fan of Xenoblade voice acting. It's kind of been iffy at best. That's just
Yeah. I mean,
It's
for
just-
me, 2 was atrocious. X was
Caleb.
okay. I've been talking too much. I apologize. But
So, well, I just wanted to
go ahead.
like kind of take a step back, maybe from specifically like Xenoblade Chronicles, but go back to talking about the first one. It was a
my
game
bad.
that did really well in the West, which I definitely think surprised Nintendo. And Xenoblade Chronicles was so well received that it ended up getting multiple ports. It was ported to the 3DS, and then also it was made compatible on the Wii U. So kind of looking through the Xeno Saga, as it's kind of called, I believe. No, sorry, Xenoblade, just in general, rather. And for those of you who have played the few games, do you think the remaster for Chronicles was warranted? And do you think this is a good step for Monolith as a company? Because Xenoblade 2 was their best-selling game. And, you know, there are questions about whether or not a Xenoblade Chronicles remake will reach the same level. Do you think that that's going to happen? And after that, we can kind of talk about the very infamous now IGN review.
Oh boy.
Ooh, I haven't seen that, so I'll be hearing about this.
It got deleted for a reason.
But yeah, so
What?
It
did what?
the IGN. So I guess we'll go ahead and talk about that then. So IGN released.
If that's okay, sorry.
IGN released their Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition review, and it was they gave it, I believe, an 8 out of 10, which obviously kind of pissed anyone off who was a fan of the game, because obviously, like, people expected it to get a much higher ranking when it was considered such a good game, to the point where the YouTube review for it has more than a 95% dislike rate, not just because the score was kind of unfair, especially for how it's described and the points against it that they give, but also because, once again, it was very clear that whoever produced the IGN video had not played the game. They screwed up almost every single name, and then they deleted the video, re-uploaded it with new audio, and still got most of the names wrong. But a lot of their nitpicks are things that kind of were loved in the West, and just about the first game in general. They made fun of some of the voice lines. They made fun of some of the characters that people really liked, and they kind of seemed to miss the point of the game. And I guess kind of stepping away from the game in specific and talking more about kind of game reviews in general, just because obviously this IGN review has kind of relit the hatred for games journalism. Alex, for you having played the game, how do you feel about the IGN review? But for the rest of us, how do y'all feel about video game reviews in general?
I'm gonna be honest. Or Cam, do you want to go? I'm sorry, sorry.
No. I was gonna say I'll let you go first on your on your take on like the Xenoblade thing. I'll put my take on like what I think about game.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna be honest. I didn't watch IGN's review. I just kind of saw like all the memes on Twitter, and I was like, oh, haha, IGN messed it up again. On one hand, I do think, IGN getting the names wrong, and like they definitely need to play the full game, especially something like Xenoblade. You kind of gotta get into it and like review it for what's there. But at the same time, I do think there's a certain amount of IGN is usually reviewed by individuals, and if they have a more negative opinion on the game than like the general fans, and I do think there is a certain amount of, we can respect that. If they didn't get it, they didn't get it. That's on them. I mean, they're dumb. What can I say? It's IGN. They've pretty much messed up everything. I don't know. I'm not too shaken by it, just because I think we've all kind of gotten to the point where we don't respect IGN enough that like whatever they put doesn't matter. But
yeah,
it is kind of hard to see the big, because I do think as successful as Xenoblade Chronicles, the original one, was in the West, I do think it's important to point out, like, it took a lot of effort to bring it to the West. There was a thing called Project Rainfall, which I was too young to really be a part of, but there were 3 RPGs, Xenoblade being one of them, and these like big JRPGs in the Wii that really weren't ported over to the West until there were a whole bunch of petitions and whatnot from mainly Americans, because it was ported in Europe, but it was not ported to America. So I think seeing what is really arguably one of the biggest like RPGs of the modern day, almost like a new classic, or really the modern RPG classic, kind of get talked down to by a big gaming company is a little bit disheartening. Yeah.
All right. Wait. Oh, is that it?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Most of the things you said was right. I was just kind of thinking. I took a minute to think, because. So, what I'm gonna say is gonna be very agreed by most people, but then again, it's probably not the nicest thing to say. I think that IGN is, and this is completely true. I think most people agree with me, but still, it's just not a nice thing to say. I don't think that I think if you want to go to a game, like if you want a game review, don't go to IGN, because this is not, again, as we've said, this is not the first time they've done this. I can't remember what other game caused an outrage about it, but yeah, like again, they don't fully go through the game, and again, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, because like you have a time gap, or what do you call it? you have a like a time. God help me out. You have a time frame of when you can review this game, before like I guess the game dies out and the hype for it has died. Um, and you have like a minimal time to play this game for maybe like a couple hours and give your ideas on it. I really do not believe that. I think the only way to get an authentical or like a good review of a game is if you play it yourself. That's probably the best way you're gonna get a game review. But just IGN in general, because this again, the whole thing with Xenoblade, I haven't played it myself, but I know it's probably much better than what it's getting for, or what it's saying. And people reading these reviews are like, it's bullshit, and it's got to be because you didn't play the full game, you didn't get any of the names right. Like, this is not the first time this has happened. So I'm think maybe some game reviews are just not the best to go look for, unless you're like, of course, Breath of the Wild. That's a great game, and that got like a 10 out of 10. But like, really, if you want the best kind of experience, like if you want the best experience for playing a game, I really think it may cost you money, but you might as well try it yourself. Sell it after, I guess, if you don't enjoy it. But you should kind of just like, my point is you should get into a game by playing it yourself, not by reading what a professional company is saying about a game who can't even get their names right. But then again, that's just me. So I think focus more on like the good aspects rather than, and like get like your game facts right, and then you become a more reliable source to judge a game, and then play most of it too, because you're never going to get a full experience for a game or understand most of the references or things in a game without playing like 90% of it. I think I don't want to say Persona 5 was the game that they judged. Persona 5 got a good rating by them, big whoop. But like, I think that was the game that they didn't play fully, so they didn't really understand most of the concepts. And then somebody made a comment about something that was missing in the game, but it was already in there. You just had to play it longer. It's things like those where it's like the fuller game reviews. Like, I'm gonna say again, smaller channels will have really good responses to games. Anyway, next person. I was just giving my opinion on IGN as a whole, So not just Xenoblade, but as a whole of reviewers. So.
Okay, so I'm of the opinion that people who are making reviews for video games there's a few things that they should do. For one, I think companies should make their reviews, if they're like a big company like IGN, they have like 3 different people review them, and then their scores based off of an aggregate, and like they have to be able to confirm that they've like played it and completed the game. And then on top of that, I would also say one of the things that bothers me most about some review websites is bringing politics into gaming, and how there is an issue, seemingly an issue with companies not taking political stances in their games. I see a lot of game reviewers and games journalists taking off against companies for not being political, but that's not always what gaming is about. Obviously, if a game is going to bring politics in it, sure, it needs to have strong stances so that it gets its point across correctly. But Persona 5, I've seen a lot of reviews taking off against it because it doesn't push social issues more than it does by default. And I think that's just an unfair way to judge a game, because that's mostly your opinion. That's not even a quality of game. That is your social opinions. And so, obviously, like I said, if politics is part of the story, then yes, it needs to be strong. But if it's not part of the story, it shouldn't ever be counted against it. And it's strange because it's not even a blanket treatment with that across gaming. I like to relate, obviously they're not anything alike, but like in my head, I've always related games like Persona to like games like Pokemon, because combat-wise, they're similar. They play very similarly. You
They
go
do.
from place to place and you have turn-based battles. Or just any of the games that consist of the 4 dudes in a line genre. I think it would be unfair to say that Pokemon is unpolitical because it's a game made for kids, but then you'd take a game that is very similar in nature and styling, and then you'd say that that game needs to be more political. And obviously, Persona and Pokemon, those are apples to oranges story-wise. If you shouldn't be able to judge one game based off of your personal opinion, but then not do that for every game.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you have an unfair balance of, what games are being judged based on someone's own personal beliefs rather than the actual quality of the game. And I think having multiple people peer review and have an aggregate review would fix that issue. And then also relegating reviews where people are talking about their beliefs rather than just the quality of the game. Those should be relegated to opinion piece platforms rather than more general news section for websites like IGN or any of those other companies.
I also noticed, if you don't mind, like
Sorry.
chiming in for like 2 seconds, I'm agreeing with what you're saying on this because what you said something really right. Most of the time, they don't even have people reviewing the games who enjoy the franchise.
Mhm.
I remember somebody saying, and don't quote me on this. I'm so bad at saying, "Oh, I heard this around," but then whatever. They don't even have people who enjoy RPGs who review RPGs. You could be into a chess game or something, and then somebody who doesn't enjoy chess is gonna what do you call it? Is gonna be reviewing it. But anyway, you're right. Sorry, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, that is another issue, is that they often don't care whether or not the people reviewing the games are into the kinds of games that they're reviewing, and that is another big issue, is that I don't think that game reviews should be done just as a general public view, which is how they often are set up. It's, the everyman's review. Would anyone in the world enjoy this game? But JRPGs are a smaller subsect of game, or even, any genre like an FPS game or whatever. People really looking at those reviews are people who are into those kinds of games. If I'm looking at a shooter game, I'm going to look at a review, but if they're just giving me most general possible reasons for why it's good or bad, not specifics like how the game feels comparatively to other things in the genre, they're just giving me arbitrary reasons for why it might be bad, and that's not useful. And that kind of thinking ruins any kind of work. Even in game development, trying to create something that works for everyone works for no one in the end, because no one gets exactly what they want. So the reviews shouldn't be trying to cater to everyone. They should be trying to cater to the audiences that they're supposed to be targeting. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, I definitely think there are kind of two sides to that coin. Is that companies like IGN, their job is kind of to give the general review. Obviously, it doesn't help. Yeah, you're right. If you are a JRPG fan and you want a specific review on why you want it as a JRPG fan, IGN's probably not the place to look. But IGN, I mean, as a company, kind of has to market to as big of an audience as possible. And that's where the job of other smaller reviewers, like you said, come in. People who, if it's a shooter, someone who plays shooters, that's, or, if it's a JRPG, someone who has a history of playing JRPGs. I think expecting companies like IGN to give more specific reviews is kind of impossible because off of their format and just the sheer number of games that they have to review.
Can I counter that real quick?
Yeah.
I already said that they should be multi-reviewed, and they have aggregate reviews. And I would think that would solve the problem, because you could have two people who play shooters and then one person who doesn't reviewing them. And they give their reviews in tandem. So you would get the general information you need about the game if you're just trying to get into something in a certain genre, but then you get the specifics. And I think it's wrong to assume that people in the general public would be dissuaded from a review that gives you more information about the game.
No.
I think that's just an assumption that your readers are ignorant almost.
And that's, I mean, that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is that if IGN's responsibility, or in terms of like the greater review space, is to give the quick essential review. They don't their reviews are one page, because for the general public, and this isn't really a diss on the general public, but most people aren't going to read a review article that is more than one page. That's not even really just me saying something about the general public. That is just kind of a fact.
I don't even read if it's a page. I read 5 seconds of it.
Most
and then
people
see
just
what they generally said.
Yeah, most people just go to the IGN review and then scroll down to the bottom, and if the number is above a 7, they're probably going to buy it if they were just looking for, is this game okay? And yeah, they could have multiple reviews, but I would say from IGN's perspective, that means probably hiring 2 to 3 times as many employees as they already have in a market that isn't exactly growing. And then, that's kind of the purpose of Metacritic, is to aggregate all of those reviews and say, hey, this is what everyone thinks. And that's why there is both the reviewer score and the, non-reviewer score, that, the general public score. And so I think there is already a place for that kind of information. I would say expecting IGN as one company to have 3 people review every single game is kind of asking them to hire a lot more employees than they currently have, and at that point they're kind of not filling the space that they were trying to fill.
Yeah, but then I don't think they should ever be able to give review scores, because if they're only surface reviewing every game they play, that is not a real review. That is just lying and putting it on paper.
I think you can get the general feel of a game in the first hour of gameplay.
That is for certain genres, sure.
Yeah, do I think something like Persona needs someone to play at least to the end of the second boss? Yes. And that is generally, IGN always lists, or at least for the most part, how far into the game that they have played. And so I just think expecting a reviewer like IGN that is essentially responsible for putting out dozens of reviews every week to play through the entirety of every game that they play is kind of an impossible ask. IGN is not meant to be the review for hardcore gamers. It is meant to be the surface level review. If you want a deeper review, go to someone specializing in that genre.
I'm not even talking about the writing of the reviews. I'm talking about the scoring, because the way they score undeservingly helps some games, and undeservingly destroys other games.
That is kind of the problem with reviews as a whole, though. It's a subjective.
that you don't have that problem as much with full reviews. Filling a niche doesn't need to exist is the problem.
But I mean,
Because
I'm
there's
just
so many companies and people out there willing to give reviews that are actually good reviews. There's no need for a niche of a company that's unwilling to do its job properly.
It's like BuzzFeed. I'm gonna say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really
BuzzFeed of
feels like
gaming.
BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed of gaming. It feels like if BuzzFeed was like
I'd say
sticking
the
their
two
nose into
worst gaming review sites are, well, gaming sites in general are IGN and Polygon.
Polygon.
Only certain parts of
Oh, God.
Polygon.
but I mean,
Polygon
You're
likes to
telling
make
me you're telling me
everything
naming
opinionated and political.
you're telling me how to differentiate all the Fire Emblem characters is not a good video.
That's a solid video.
I think that
I'm messing around.
the problem with that approach is that you are kind of taking away the review that a lot of people, more casual people look to. If I'm just a casual player looking for a game to play, I don't want to have to read a 20-page review. And yeah, I mean, obviously the score is always going to be subjective, though. I mean, you're saying, okay, they need to play the full game, or they need to be an expert in the genre in order to give a score. But if you're an expert in the genre, you also have your own pre-built biases so that's going to influence your score.
I don't necessarily believe that there needs to be that they have to be super experienced in the genre. Just if you don't play the full game, you're lying about what the game.
But what I'm saying is, so if
Game
for a
can be
game
amazing
review,
for
if you expect a review in the first week of a 100-hour video game, that's almost certainly never going to happen from a company like from a
company like IGN.
But even most of the game reviewers on the internet that release their reviews in the first week have probably only played half of the game, and they don't even have to try and cover the scope that companies like IGN or GameSpot or Polygon
they never update that. They never update their reviews unless the reviews are getting hated on.
But once again, I mean,
it would be fine if they released their initial review and then completed it later.
Yeah, I mean, in instances where
so they just leave a job incomplete, and then you have situations like, and I love Destiny. It gave Destiny 2 an amazing review right off the bat, and everyone hated it because they didn't play enough of the game.
Yeah, but I mean,
play maybe 30 hours of the game because they never would have given it the review they had.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think asking that of a company that is essentially required by its audience to review as many games. I mean, I'm not a fan of IGN. I'm not a fan of the quality of their reviews, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of someone who is a more serious games consumer. But I think for most people, the IGN score is good enough. And I mean, if you are only looking at one singular review, you've already got, I mean, you're clearly not really paying that much attention to the review itself. You're really either looking for validation or just the most surface level reason to buy a game. If you are very much on the fence about whether or not you are going to buy a game, you're definitely not just going to look at the IGN review, and you're probably going to wait for one of the groups that does full reviews to do full reviews. But that's just not IGN's niche. I mean, and I get that that's not the most desirable niche. But, I mean, at the end of the day, someone kind of does have to fill it. And as much as I dislike a lot of the things that IGN does, and yes, they do make a lot of mistakes. And yes, I do wish that they would update their reviews more. I just don't think that that is feasible for the amount of content that they have to put out. Because if they didn't try, if they didn't do as many surface level reviews as they did, there would be a lot of games that just would never get reviewed. Because if everyone, spends the 100 hours to beat every Xenoblade or the time it takes to beat every Doom or what Elder Scrolls game, it's just, they would be so bogged down in
lengthy games are few and far between.
I would say, but most games now are in the 40 plus hour range, or at least 20 plus hours. And
big AAA games are, but that's 2-3 a month maybe that are that length, and then the rest of the games you play are 6 to 12 hours.
I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree to that. I mean, in April, there were probably more than that in terms of long games. I mean, so in April, we had...
Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy
Animal
VII
Crossing
Remake,
doesn't count, because Animal Crossing is a...
I mean, it's a large AAA title.
Infinite
I
game.
think it also was the highest selling of the month. So I do think
but it's not a story game, and it's not a...
Well, we're not talking about story games. We're talking about games in general.
Just in terms of
it's
big
it
April
counts.
releases.
You can never beat Animal Crossing, though, and that's my point.
I mean, okay, I'll give you that. If I could cut in for a second and ask, 'cause
Yeah,
a lot
you
of I feel like this conversation is about day one reviews of like long form games. So is there an argument to be made that day one reviews aren't good reviews inherently?
I
Yes,
mean, I think
that's
inherently they're
that's what
surface
I'm
level,
saying.
but I think they do have to exist. Because I think for a lot of people, they need that, because, and you have to, a day one review doesn't mean they bought it at 12 o'clock the last night and played it that day and then wrote up a real quick review. Most game reviewers get their product close to a month out from release, but generally, at least 2 weeks before release. So they do have time to play it. But at the same time, I mean, if you just look at March, so March got a Division 2 story DLC, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Nioh 2, My Hero 1's Justice, a new MLB game, Animal Crossing, Doom Eternal, Bleeding Edge, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Half-Alive Alyx, and Persona 5 Royal. All of those games are over 20 hours just to...
Not sure.
With the exception of what? Division 2 and Ori? Everything else I said is at least a 20-hour game.
Well, me on that. I think Alex is shorter, but I'm not certain.
Well, that's a VR game, though. That's still a pretty big game to have to review. And I'm not saying, obviously it's impossible to beat those games in a short amount of time. But, I think you're grossly overestimating how many reviewers work for IGN. And yeah, would I like IGN to have more employees? And as long as those employees are being paid well, yes. But is it feasible for a company like IGN to do that? Probably not. Journalism as a whole is on the downtrend. And so they have to put out as much content just to maintain their audience, just to maintain the reviewers that they already have. IGN as a company is not a company that is exactly bursting at the seams with money.
The Division 2 didn't come out in April.
The Division 2, I said the story DLC.
It came out for Stadia.
No, the Division 2 Warlords of the Warlords of New York DLC came out on March 3rd, which is a story-based DLC. Yeah.
That definitely took less than 6 hours to beat.
And I said that wasn't one of the 20 plus hours, but Mystery Dungeon is 20 plus, Nioh 2 is 20 plus. Animal Crossing, if you want the full experience, would actually take you years.
Yeah,
Doom Eternal is a 20
There's
plus.
no beating it, so that doesn't count.
The Control DLC 1 was probably 10 plus. Half-Life Alyx, while probably less than 20 hours, is a VR, game, so that does take a bit of time to write. And then Persona 5 Royal is silly long. It's long even if you are experienced with the game and know how to get through it quickly. And a lot of,
but of those, that was 3 games a month. So you gave
Those
me
were
my
those were all in March.
yes.
So that was.
I know 3 games that are particularly lengthy a month.
I mean, Ori's probably. I mean, well.
Ori's pretty long.
So one, 2, 3, 4.
Ori
So those were 5 long.
8 to 16 hours.
Okay, so almost 20 hours, but that's just 5 major.
Almost on the long end of beating a game.
Well, yeah, but if you want to put it at the short end, you're assuming every single games journalist is great at games, and I mean, it would probably take me closer to 16 hours because I'm not very good at platformers, and I play a lot of video games. But
Cuphead
but
proved
so
the games journalists are kinda bad at that.
that's just the major games. There were other smaller games that deserved reviews.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that those other small games don't take nearly as long.
Yeah, but I mean, this list that I'm looking at right now has over 20 games. So if you have to spend a combined total of what, 400 hours just to beat the major games that I said? No, well, over 300 hours just to beat the major games that I said. That's a lot of time, and then you have re-releases, smaller games, smaller major company games, indie games, all stuff that deserves time. And if companies like IGN are forced to spend that much time on the major games, there's no conceivable way they get to the smaller games. I mean, that's IGN as one company, but if every games review company has to spend all of that time reviewing just the major ones, a lot of indie ones fall to the wayside, especially when people aren't probably going to go. I mean, because a lot of people also just look at the front page of IGN and say, "Oh, this game got a review. It must be a big deal." For the people who aren't always following every single game release and stuff like that. But
so IGN, not
debate.
counting any of the subsidiaries, has 250 employees.
Yeah, but that's
of which would be writers.
250 writers?
I said most of which would be writers.
Really? Because companies like that have a lot of financial headroom, a lot of legal headroom. I mean, and then not even considering the management and the corporate. I mean,
it would be bold to assume that a journalism company with 250 employees wouldn't have at least 60 writers.
They laid off a lot of their employees last year. But here,
Got it. I got
it.
Okay. If I can, I think we spent a lot of time on this topic.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of got it out. It's all good points. I think nobody's wrong here. There's certainly some looking at that we need to do with games journalism, but at the same time, we do need to kind of cut them some slack here and there. It's a difficult topic. It's going to be one that we're going to have to keep on talking about as video games become more and more of the more mainstream medium and artistic fashion that they're slowly or really quickly becoming. But let me see. Where did we branch off of this? Xenoblade.
Yeah.
I think I already said most of my review in my long rant that I hope was comprehensible. So we might want to move on to our next news topic altogether, unless there's something we really need to say about Definitive.
I think
remember that time in Xenoblade 2 where she says that she can get some money, and then Gramps says, "Nothing illegal, I hope," and Rex smacks him. That's pretty funny. It's probably the best part of the game.
Yo, remember that time in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 where Rex is like 100,000 gil or whatever it is in Xenoblade, and then when you get Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive, if you have a save file from 2, they give you 100,000 gil or whatever it is. That was fun.
Wonderful.
That's the type of references I like. Why? Because free money.
Free stuff, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, and sorry for kind of going on that long tangent there about games journalism. But
No.
games journalism is incredibly important. And kind of moving on from games journalism as a specific topic, we do have a bunch of other news in the works. And obviously, games journalists cover gaming news. So let's talk about that first piece of news. There's a big PS5 event coming up, and a lot of
Let's
PS5
go.
kind of rumors. So let's hear what y'all have to think about those.
I'm gonna jump in on this one early because I gotta get my words out. Very excited. I know there's probably no basis to this rumor, but my body would be so ready if they announced some nice backwards compatibility without me having to rebuy some game. I'd also love some nice like ports, especially of course of Persona. But honestly, I think the announcement's gonna be mostly on games. I think they've said that hopefully we get some spec stuff. But if I'm gonna put my hopes out for any games we're gonna get, I'm hoping for Gravity Rush. I'm hoping for a Gravity Rush sequel. I've always wanted to play some Gravity Rush. Excuse me. And I would love to see a third game in that franchise. Camden, you can go ahead.
Wait. Repeat. Sorry.
What? Oh,
Wait.
I want.
Repeat the last part of your sentence. Sorry, I kind of blanked out on it, but I sounded important.
I just said for the like kind of games I kind of want to see. I basically just want to see like a Gravity Rush sequel announced, or like a.
Okay, gravity. Okay. So should we talk about the Alex, or no? Alex.
Okay, so that entire thing was like glitching for me. I did not understand a word you
Oh,
said. I
sorry.
apologize.
Okay, yeah.
That
Freaking
was...
my mic, bro. This broke boy hours for me.
Oh
Can you hear
boy.
me now?
No.
Broke
boy. I do apologize. You're botting real bad. I do.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello.
Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, what'd you say? I'm
Let's
so sorry.
go.
Can you feel it
Okay,
now, Mr. Krabs?
so shut up. Should we talk about the rumor that you said, Alex?
Backwards compatibility?
Yeah, backwards compatibility.
He was already talking about that.
I mean, like, what about it? I mean, it
I don't know. I think so. PS5 rumors are great. Don't get me wrong, but like I'm waiting. If we get backwards compatibility for like all the way back to PS2, I'm gonna be hype as fuck. Anyways, that's all I really had to say. I'm gonna wait for the rest of people to talk and then get my opinion if that's okay. Anyway, Kaleb, you're welcome to. I wanted to bring up that one rumor. I didn't know if we should talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I was just gonna say, like, this is kind of a big move for Sony, being the first to kind of have an event for their next gen console, especially with kind of what's going on in the world right now. Is kind of a big move for Sony. Definitely a surprising one. There were a lot of rumors out that Sony was going to wait until after Xbox had made all of their big announcements. I know they already had kind of a smaller announcement where they showed off a bunch of stuff. Obviously, we've seen their console, we've seen that sort of stuff, but we still don't know the price and then all of the things coming to it. And there were a lot of rumors that Sony was kind of going to wait until all of Xbox's stuff was out there in the wild so that they could maybe make some fine-tuning adjustments, kind of figure out kind of their whole scheme. And so I guess maybe they got the information that they needed to do theirs, but I definitely think them doing it right now is kind of a big deal. Sony's kind of known for its theatricality, and so I think this announcement will probably be very theatrical, which is hard to do without an audience. So I do think that's going to be really interesting to see. I think it's going to be really cool to see Sony kind of put their cards on the table, because there obviously have been concerns that the PS5 is going to be underpowered compared to the Xbox Series X, but obviously like the Unreal stuff that we talked about on the last podcast kind of put a lot of those rumors to bed. So it is really interesting to me to see where Sony is going to take this presentation and what they're going to show off about the PS5, whether it's new games, kind of a more in-depth look at the hardware, and just kind of like where Sony plans on going in the future. I think that's going to be really cool to see.
I think for me, the only thing that I'm particularly interested in is the controller, because I think it's a very interesting design and like direction that they're going for like their bells and whistles on the controller is strange to me. I do think it's unfortunate that most of the hype around the PS5 right now is not even on the console itself, and it's more so on possibility of backwards compatibility and then the exclusive games, um, which I've talked about before. But I think exclusives are just an unfortunate product of competition, because if you make exclusive games and someone doesn't buy your console, then you're just effectively cutting off people from experiencing that. And I believe that games are a form of art, and so you're taking away the possibility of experiencing an art form from people just because they chose hypothetically a better option for them. Because I'm not going to say that PlayStation is better than Xbox or Xbox is better than PlayStation. But forcing someone to choose your console just because you have specific games that you're paying extra money to have be kept off of other platforms is a really unfortunate way to sell your console. Because I think designing something should be and selling it should be based on the merit of the product itself, not the bells and whistles that you're choosing to sell it on. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. But also, in one, I'm going to try to not retread too much because I've talked extensively about my feelings on the PlayStation 5, so I'm going to try to keep it a little more focused. But I do agree with you to a certain extent. I do worry about as consoles are progressing more towards kind of an equal sort of graphics fidelity, loading fidelity. I think there is a day when we're going to have the kind of in quotes perfect console. And we kind of know that all the consoles are kind of in development of the same features. So it's kind of like, well, what else can you put in a thing that you can make exclusive to one console? Because all the bells and whistles for it to really be kind of worth putting in your console, worth advertising, I guess, would have to be exclusive in one way, shape, or form. I do agree it's an unfortunate side effect of just how things need to be sold. But I do feel that kind of exclusive games are kind of the only place you can turn when it comes to sort of keeping things on your console that are worth marketing. But that's just my 2 cents.
I think the issue with that is that a lot of and here's my thinking is that you have things that the PS5 that they're choosing to do that other consoles aren't doing. Like with the controller design and the haptic feedback on the controller. That's something that is specific to the console. And I guess me saying bells and whistles shouldn't have been what I said, because the bells and whistles on the console, like the things that only that console does, are great. I don't think games specifically should be a part of that. Unless it's. I guess Nintendo would be the exception just because
I was
they've
about to.
always been a more specific platform. So while they have their exclusives, they also cut themselves off from a lot of the more general games. And so there is a balance there. They're not trying to steal the market away from another company, and that's not what their objective is necessarily. They just have what they have, and sometimes they use what other companies have.
If I
And so
can.
a Nintendo console is more about the experience, you know?
Yeah.
It's significantly weaker than both of the other consoles, but, most people own a Switch.
Well, yes, and I do think that Nintendo does try to separate themselves from the rest of the industry, but I do think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that they're not in competition with everything else. They
No, I
certainly
don't
are
think
trying
they're.
to compete.
Yeah.
It's and they are using their exclusives, I would argue, even more than other consoles to kind of leverage. But at the same time, I do think your bells and whistles thing was actually accurate. 'Cause I think Nintendo does exactly what you say the best. Instead of focusing on graphic fidelity and on how fast our games are, they go, well, you can take it wherever you want. I think that's a wonderful example of where
Yeah.
your kind of thought process goes exactly right. Um, I do think though there is some I don't know, I guess some validity in kind of having the black box that just plays games. I guess it just comes when how complicated do we want our systems? Because Nintendo coming to the Switch has had some failures kind of using that mindset. We've had the kind of the Virtual Boy, which was out way before its time. The Wii U had confusing marketing, a half decent idea, but just didn't really know how to sell itself, and didn't have kind of the wide appeal games library to compete. Um, and honestly, I think there's so much you can put into a console when it comes down to it. The one thing the gamers want is games. I don't think there's really escaping that. And I don't know if you can do enough to a console to really kind of make it where, well, I want to buy it for its usability, but the games just aren't on it. And I don't think there's ever going to be a usability that beats that. If, like, honest, like the Wii U, for example, I only bought the Wii U because it had Sonic Lost World. Like, I would have bought an Xbox if it wasn't for Sonic Lost World. So,
Ew,
I don't know.
Sonic.
I am a big Sonic fan, so you can shut your mouth. Nah, shut your bitch ass. No, okay. No. But like, like like right now, like I'm thinking about buying a PlayStation 5. I'm not even considering the Xbox, whatever the title is, exclusively because of like Persona and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like they're not even the Xbox isn't even on my radar right now because I'm like, well, the games I want aren't on it. And I completely agree that artistically, that's unfortunate. That we should be able to have the games kind of wherever we want. We should get as many people to experience them as possible. It's just I don't know if we're
I,
ever going to reach a day where
I
that can
think
happen.
I think if I think from where you're standing, if yes, we got to the point where the consoles were virtually even, then yes, that would be the only route to divide them, and that's unavoidable. But I mean, looking at the current generation of consoles, for user friendliness and power, the Xbox wins. It has a better UI and it has better online features. And it has the better backing system with Game Pass and Gold. PlayStation Plus does show itself to be very well set up sometimes. But overall, I would say as an experience, having played on both PlayStation and Xbox for a while, it's very unfortunate that they're only selling right now. They're only really selling on the exclusives rather than the actual console itself.
And
Uh,
I'll try to keep my mouth shut after I ask this. I would argue that we're kind of at the point where, other than the Switch, I think Nintendo's really the only one actually trying to do something. I think we're pretty much at the point where we have two consoles kind of trying to do the same thing. I mean, Xbox and PlayStation pretty much kind of go head and head. They're both trying to kind of be more powerful than the other. And the reason that PlayStation's winning is due to, I mean, exclusives. And we can talk back and forth, but I do wonder, what would you do to a console kind of to make it superior? Because we can talk about how much better Xbox Live is than PlayStation Plus, which I do agree the Games Pass on Xbox is, oh, it is sexy as fuck. But God, you can pay $1 and get Nier and Final Fantasy 15. That's attractive. But anyway, yeah. What would you do to kind of remedy the exclusive problem?
Um, well, obviously, are you saying remedy the exclusive problem in its current state or in future?
I
Because
mean,
for the current console state, until the next generation of consoles comes out, I
I
would say
mean,
PS4 is
going.
the most lackluster console, but they have the exclusives, so they won.
If I can clarify, I'll clarify
Yeah,
my
so
question.
I'm just
If you were
asking.
developing if you were developing a console right now and you had the money to make it marketable to the Xbox and everything, and you had all the power you needed, what would you market it on other than exclusives?
Um, Initially, I would probably work on uh, UI design to make it as accessible as possible because being someone who I play on the PlayStation less, and in the times that I've been on the PlayStation, I have a very large tendency to forget where I am in the menus. It's it's a lot of the times you'll see it's just not straightforward as it should be if you're trying to. God, y'all are so distracting talking about the Stadia.
Oh, Stadia
Um,
time, boy.
Oh my
um,
god.
a lot of the times you'll see that people who aren't into consoles would have trouble navigating something like the PlayStation 4's menus. Um, and I think that Nintendo does an amazing job. Everything presents itself right in front of you, and it's easy to understand. Um, Xbox was doing all right until the last update that they've done. It's kind of trash. Not gonna lie, they threw the party chat, the messages system, and the invite system all into one menu, and it's kind of confusing. Um, but having the right framework for people to understand it would be my first choice. And then my second thing would be providing more customization for the console and the options inside of the console as well. Because one thing that has always really bothered me about games on consoles is that you can never, everyone has something that they prefer, whether it's performance or graphic fidelity, and the inability to choose on a console makes them less useful to certain people. And you can always customize something like that on a PC, but if you could take like what you can do on a PC where you can change so many more settings to be what you want, to prioritize what you want, that would be my other biggest change. You know, it shouldn't just be it shouldn't always just be a generalized experience. You should have the option to cater your experience for you. So those are the things I would prioritize.
Okay, that's cool. I see where you're going with it. I would disagree that it's like marketable competitively, but I do agree those are changes that console needs to make. Anyway, there's other people who want to talk besides us too.
Yeah.
So go ahead and let them speak.
Yeah, there are a couple of us. So I would just say,
Yep.
in terms of exclusives, I do think you're kind of ignoring the main reason exclusives actually exist, which is not for specific. I mean, well, sorry, there's a dual purpose for exclusives. On one hand, companies like Microsoft and Sony need, consoles to, or need exclusive games to market, but game developers need a shit ton of money to make games, and one of the only ways for a lot of these companies to get funding, especially ones that aren't owned by massive corporations like EA, which no one wants EA to own more companies, is to get funding from Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo. And when Sony is willing to throw out a lot of money to make games really high quality, that's so much better for the games market than it is a detraction because people are, because people may not get to play them. So it's kind of, it's a tough situation because obviously you want good games to be everywhere, but a lot of those good games would not exist if Sony or Microsoft weren't willing to give the money in the first place. And it just so happens that Sony's kind of willing to give more money, and I guess in a lot of situations to the right people, because Microsoft has plenty of exclusives. They just haven't all turned out to be that great. But at the same time, those exclusives that both companies have in a lot of situations wouldn't exist if those companies weren't willing to shell out the money. I mean, a lot of my favorite games are exclusives. Bloodborne, Sunset Overdrive, God of War. All of those games would not exist unless Sony or Microsoft were willing to give out that money. And yeah, it sucks that they're stuck to one console. Well, in Sony's case, one console, and Microsoft's generally it's now to both PC and Xbox. But those do exist for a reason, and it's a good thing, in my opinion, for the games market for exclusives to exist when they're being served under that role. And then we also can't forget how many first-party developers there are. I mean, Nintendo is a company of first-party developers, and we treat Sony and Microsoft kind of differently for having that, but it is the exact same.
The one thing I would say against that is that I would be fine if it was more fine if it was just a support thing. But it's not always that the companies really need the money to develop those games for the console. Bloodborne and Nier Automata would be my main examples, because it did not cost them nearly as much to develop Bloodborne as most games would, because they were using the same engine they were doing for their main release, and they already had most of the assets they needed. And it wouldn't have been any sweat off of From Software's back to have released it on Xbox. It was just that PlayStation gave them a shit ton of money to keep it exclusive. And then
Well, I would say you're kind of discrediting how... I mean, obviously, yeah, they did have the Dark Souls 3 engine, or the Dark Souls 2 engine, whichever one that they used. But Bloodborne still took... I mean, it was in development for close to 6 years, rather. But the main development still took 3 years.
I find it likely
using the same engine, yes, it does shrink down a lot of the process. But if you look at if you put Bloodborne next to Dark Souls 3, they are visually and functionally very different games. I mean, yeah, they're in the same engine.
Functionally, very little.
There are a lot of smaller functional differences in terms of the game engine. They do fine-tune a lot of things for the different playstyles that the two of them expect. But also, Bloodborne looks nothing like Dark Souls 3, except for the fact that they are both dark. And that takes a lot of that takes a lot of time to develop. And I mean even remakes, or remasters, those take time and money.
Stick on Bloodborne, I'll cut down to Nier Automata as an even better example. While I can't confirm that probably developed for both consoles, which it probably was originally developed for both consoles, as it seems unlikely that they would just decide to develop an exclusive game. Nier Automata, they finished that game for both consoles, and then Sony gave them a fuck ton of money so that Xbox didn't have the game.
I don't think that happened at the end of development. That almost certainly did not happen at the end of development. If that happened at the end of development, that's a
pretty close.
I mean, I play the thing on PC, and knowing the PC port, they definitely had like, at the very least, the consoles in general in mind, because the PC port has like a lot of minor like PC related issues, like porting related issues. But there were definitely some PC port issues. So
And it
saying that, oh, it was developed for both and then made exclusive to one, I don't know. We might want to do more. Might want to look into that before we start making that. I apologize if that's rude.
they released it for both. They had a contract for them to wait to release the game for Xbox.
Oh, it was a
It's
time
like
exclusive.
with Bungie. They had it as a timed exclusive. Timed exclusives are one of the most underhanded marketing tactics I think exists in the game.
I mean, but the other side of it is just because a game has finished development or towards the end of development doesn't mean the company has the money to stay afloat. I mean, a lot of game companies go under right before release.
They were
And Platinum is
companies.
Platinum is relatively a small game developer. They've had a lot of big games, but every single one of those has been funded by an outside source. I mean, and not every single one of their games has been successful. I mean, Bayonetta as a franchise only continues to exist now because Nintendo bought it, and it's still, presumably, being developed by Platinum. I mean, The Wonderful 101 was crowdsourced. So I mean, and Scalebound, one of their biggest, projects, was going to be a Microsoft exclusive, and then it got canceled. I mean, and they do have cross-platform releases, but that doesn't mean that they can do everything on their own. I mean, they've developed first-party titles quite a bit. I mean, they developed Star Fox Zero and Star Fox Guard. So they're not a company that has really ever existed on their own. I mean, they don't even publish their own games. Square published, published Nier Automata, but Nier wasn't exactly a big bet for them. And so they probably just needed the safe funding to make sure that they didn't go under if the third game in a not very popular franchise didn't succeed. They needed that. They probably needed that money. And I mean, Nier Automata was originally contracted as a PS Vita game that just got moved to the PS4. So it probably was decided very early in development that it was going to be a Sony exclusive if it started on the Vita and then came out on the PS4. So I think that kind of ignores the wider scope of exclusives, is that a lot of companies go very close to going under without that major support, and the reason Nintendo has as many first party as it does is because a lot of those companies that were developing for them early on very much struggled, because developing games is ungodly expensive, and so to discount every exclusive as kind of an underhanded move by Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo. Timed exclusives are underhanded, but they do generally exist because that company probably needs funding. It's different when COD DLC or Destiny DLC is timed exclusive, but generally that's DLC. But those companies might have needed funding to do something else. Or, yeah, I mean, if I'm Infinity Ward and I have a Call of Duty game coming out and I want more money to make sure that the development on Call of Duty 10,000 has the money, yeah, I'm going to take the timed exclusive money. I'm going to do what's best for my company. And
they're on Call of Duty 69 right now.
So I think exclusives serve actually a very positive purpose. And yeah, while some of them kind of suck, and while it does suck that there are exclusives, there've been console exclusives since the beginning. I mean, Atari only had Atari specific developed games, and Nintendo only had games, and then developed for the NES. I mean, there were very few cross-platform games, and then we got to the later generations, the PS2, the N64, the Xbox, and we saw more cross-platform because it became easier to develop cross-platform. But that also is a very expensive element of game design, because I mean, the reason we know that is because a lot of games in the PS3, Xbox 360 generation weren't cross-platform because of how difficult it was. And the other side of it was a lot of those cross-platform games were very drastically inferior on one or the other, and a lot of times it didn't have anything to do with the hardware. It really had to do with where it started development. PS4 games that went to the Xbox 360 had problems because the Xbox 360 was underpowered. The Xbox 360 games that went to the PlayStation had problems because the PlayStation 3 architecture was an absolute mess. I mean, COD has been released on just about every console under the sun, but that doesn't mean every single port or whatever has been good. And it costs Infinity Ward and, all of their 10,000 developers a shit ton of money to do that.
If I can cut in for like 5 seconds, I'm so sorry. I was looking over the Nier Automata wiki because this is one of my favorite games, so I do like reading about it on top of just making sure that we're all on the same page here. Apparently, they did not consider the Xbox One version until November 2016, when they said they would consider it, and they didn't release it until 2018. So it was definitely developed solely for the PS4 and then later ported to Xbox One. So it wasn't as much a timed exclusive as there was no Xbox version until 2017, 2016-ish. I'm sorry I am that asshole. I apologize.
Good stuff for you, man.
I'm sorry. I just like looking up Nier history. Dude, this is like, next to Monolith Soft, the story of Yoko Taro is so interesting. I'm not going to get into it now because I've already interrupted one conversation, but like, God, man, the development of these games is so... The Drakengard Nier series is fantastic, but I'll let you guys get back to talking.
I mean, I think I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say, so Dallin, I'd like to hear from you.
Okay, great. I just a couple things. One, how did we go from the PS5 news, we're getting some of that, to by the way, PlayStation's better. Also,
You're
I just
speaking
think that
facts today, I guess.
no, PlayStation's far more superior. But we all know that the true superior console is Stadia.
No, this is facts. No, Stadia is like the best console, bro. It's not. No, sorry, I take it back. It's not even a console. It's literally not even a console.
Okay, but like for real, what I was getting ready to say is like I'm gonna bring it back and then I'll let Kaleb talk again. I just think that this time, like for this conference, we're definitely gonna have to get a look at it, get an actual look at the console before anything else is gonna have to happen. If we don't see this console and truly understand what it's one, it looks like, two, how it actually runs with an actual game, then honestly, I may be switching to Xbox, but again, that's
So yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of stuff to talk about with the PS5, and we obviously went on a very long tangent about exclusives. But yeah, I mean, so tons of really cool gaming news with the PS5. Obviously, that's going to be a major announcement when that happens in just a few days. I think it's the 4th that was the planned date for that. One little quick thing I did want to mention that I noticed in the Sony announcement for that is we did get confirmation of, and I don't know if we had already gotten this, but confirmation of a black PS5 controller. People were very worried about that, but that was the picture that they used for that announcement. So for anyone worried about only having a white PS5 controller, all of your concerns are at rest. But yeah, moving forward into other console news, Sega's had a lot of big rumors about them recently. The big Sega rumor that I've seen is that some of their games are going to end up being Series X exclusives, but they also have a big anniversary coming up soon. So what do you guys think about all of this Sega news?
So, yes, Sega is still a company. And yes, they do own more
Still a
franchises
company.
than just Sonic. And yes, those franchises are sometimes of better quality than some of the Sonic games. So first, just to expand upon the rumor Caleb brought up, it's not just that they're going to be Xbox One compatible. There is a rumor going around that Microsoft is actually buying Sega, and that Sega will no longer exist. It will be part, or at least it will be a part of Microsoft. I have my doubts. Though with kind of the exclusive drought that I've been worried about, or at least I've been commenting on for Xbox, I think that would be a fantastic move. If this what gets us a new Jet Set Radio game, I will buy like 500 Xboxes. I'm gonna say it now. If they announce Jet Set Radio 3 or like a Jet Set Radio remake for Xbox, I will buy an Xbox. I'm probably gonna regret that someday, but I will do it.
Maybe.
But so and there is a also on June 4th, the same day as the Sony press conference or Sony conference, there will be a Sega press conference. The only thing we know about it is they're not announcing a Dreamcast 2. I don't know why they needed to tell us that, because we all knew they weren't developing a new console. That would be arguably the worst thing for them to do. If I had to safest bet, new Sonic game. They're gonna announce a new or it's just gonna be boring stuff no one cares about. But my hope would be we get a new Jet Set Radio. Yeah, with Hideki Naganuma as the composer, because God, he is so good. Anyway, go ahead, y'all.
News first.
So yeah, I mean, tons of potential. For
I didn't put a number in. I'm dumb. Oh Lord.
Oh, Camden, if you'd love to speak, please go ahead.
Caleb, you first. You first.
Okay, so yeah, what I was just gonna say is like, yeah, with the rumor of Sega becoming a Microsoft company, that's a pretty big deal. Microsoft has had pretty mixed results in the category of acquiring major game studios, since I guess that's what Sega really is now. I mean, there's a lot of mixed potential there. Obviously, Sega and Microsoft have had a lot of work together in the past, but it wasn't too long ago that Microsoft bought Rare and ran them into the ground. So, there is at least I think a fair bit of concern in that regard. But I am excited to see hopefully some big Sega announcements. I'd love to see another game in the vein of Sonic Mania if it's going to be a new Sonic title. But yeah, I mean, Sega has so many fantastic franchises that I think have gone very underserved. I mean, Sega has kind of become the Sonic and Yakuza game developers. I mean, and that's pretty much all they ever seem to push anymore. But they have so
I'm
many.
crying, Caleb. I'm crying.
Why are you crying?
Because there's no Jet Set Radio 3.
Oh,
All I want, man.
I'm with you there. I think they have so many franchises that I would love to see more from that we just haven't in a long time. But hopefully, I mean, maybe being owned by Microsoft will, fix that. I'm concerned because of what they did with Rare, who had tons of great franchises that went very underserved under Microsoft. But Microsoft's grown a lot since then, and they've had some great relationships with other developers. So I'm staying hopeful. I'd like to hear what other people have to think. So Camden, what do you have to say?
Okay, so I'm gonna confirm this. So Microsoft is taking over Sega, right?
Potentially.
It's a rumor. We don't know that for certain.
Okay, so if this happens, I'm gonna be real with you. Sega's gonna be they're financially gonna be better, but Sega's not gonna feel like Sega anymore. I feel like when Microsoft touches game companies, it doesn't feel the same. I can't bring an example, but like Sega was its own individual company. I don't particularly enjoy the Sonic franchise as much as the next person, but I will say it's not going to feel like authentic anymore, I guess. But that's just me. I think that financially things will be better. It'll look better. People will enjoy it more, but I don't think we're going to get another Sonic game. I think that's the only thing I really care about from Sega, but I don't think it's going to be the same. I think things are going to completely change for Sega. Like the company is, everything about it, the way things look, everything is going to change. So I think I'll put my 2 cents in, and I'll add on more when I hear other people's opinions. So.
And I want to apologize. I did accidentally cut Dallin off from something that he wanted to say, so please go ahead and say that, Dallin.
Oh yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, my turn to talk. Okay, quick thing. I really don't want them to run this into the ground, like you said, Caleb, like they did to Rare. Rare was a fantastic company. They still are. I just don't want them to like turn Sonic into like what they did with Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts and like make him all blocky and stuff. But if this does happen, what I really want them to do is actually like make more like make some of them more like other franchises well known, because the only thing that I know from Sega it really is Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic Racers. That's literally the only thing I know.
Sonic Racers, let's freaking go.
I went from sad to mad in the matter
Sonic
of
in
5
Minecraft?
seconds.
Can we get Sonic in
Yo,
Minecraft?
can we get some
Minecraft
Sonic
skins?
skin packs in
Dude,
Minecraft,
I would buy those
yo?
instantly.
No, Sonic was the only. Sonic Racing is the only good Sonic.
I will. Oh God.
Right.
Hold it in, Alex. Come on.
On a serious note, like if they do add Sonic into Minecraft, I hope we get the shoes into Minecraft so I can.
Just enchant some boots and start zooming.
Hello, anybody? Hello.
Hello? Yeah, we can hear
Come
you.
on, come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm talking about like other people because like it's kind of.
I mean, I don't know. I've said my piece. Like, I don't know. I kind of, I don't know. I think it'd be sick to see a Minecraft or like Sonic skin pack though. I'll be real. That would be so sick.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that I'm the biggest Sega fan here.
Yeah,
I mean, Sonic was, I mean, for context, Sonic was like not my first video game, but he was like my first like favorite obsession, like my first just obsession, not even just a video game, of like anything. So the Sonic franchise holds a really big, a really like, it's really important to me. So and by extension, Sega as a company, and kind of looking back through their history, like kind of seeing how much they've messed up, because it's to put into context, Sega is in kind of a bad place right now. They don't have the creative output they used to. I mean, they really have only released, they only really have 4 franchise if you want to count Phantasy Star Online. But really outside of their publishing, they're kind of missing out on a lot of the franchises they still hold the rights to, and they just kind of refuse to develop for. I do see the concerns of Microsoft running them into the ground like they did Rare. I think the difference is Sega's been running themselves into the ground. I mean, we haven't seen a good Sonic game in years, because like Mania, as much as it was developed by Sega, it was not developed by Sega. They threw a bunch of Sonic modders and fan creators, handed them a check and said, okay, make a Sonic game. And they did, and it was fantastic. But then we see the actual Sega Sonic game, kind of the big release, or what it was supposed to be kind of the big release, Sonic Forces, and it was garbage. And we kind of keep seeing this back and forth of, at least what I and other big Sonic
Forces was my favorite.
Yeah, how dare you slander Sonic Forces, you absolute degenerate.
I mean, look, I respect all opinions. Y'all can be objectively wrong in those opinions, but I will respect
your
you.
opinion is wrong. Wrong. Sonic Forces is a godlike.
Every time someone says Sonic Forces, I just think of Sonic wearing black Air Forces.
Oh my god. Hey, you could pretty much do that with Avatar.
Y'all are sleeping on the best 2 games, Sonic 06 and Sonic Boom.
I actually have a lot of words about those games.
This man is speaking the language of the gods.
I'm not going to get into this now, but Sonic 06 was underrated. Its story was good. I'll die on that hill too. I will die on that hill.
We are not getting into the Sonic 06
We're
conversation
not.
on this
But
this episode.
I will die on that hill.
Just spit straight facts.
Banned.
Minus the fact that he kissed a human girl.
No, I mean, okay, hear me out. From a story, okay, the gameplay was horrible. I'm not gonna defend the gameplay, but from a story perspective, other than Elise, we have the best villain in a Sonic game. We have arguably one of the best
The only good
characterizations of
villain in
Shadow.
Sonic.
Oh god, y'all just here to piss me off today.
Okay,
Eggman
you no more kisses
is a
for you
good
until you get a
villain.
right opinion. All right,
Okay, Sammy, Sonic fan.
Sammy the Sonic.
You freaking fan pricks! Will you learn that your actions have a consequence? Okay,
It's good that he knows.
Oh, I know this. Dude, okay. Look, Butterboy. All right, Sonic and the Black Knight is also one of my favorite Sonic games and has one of the best Sonic stories. But that's besides the point. Okay.
I cannot believe he just called one of us Butter Boy, and I don't know what.
No, it's guy in the comments. It's fuck, that's imagined. I think from one of the Discord servers I'm in. If you would read the live comments, you would understand
Absolutely
the. Well, that shit sucks, dude. Anyway,
busy.
my point is that Sega is in not so good of a place, and that there's only so much Microsoft can do to kind of bring it down. And I think the Sega fans aren't as, I guess, loud as, let's say, Atlas fans or Nintendo fans, but I think that there's just enough of them that, or at least like of retro gaming fans, that we could, if Microsoft does at least what I hope, acquire Sega, gets us maybe another real Phantasy Star game, maybe a real Panzer Dragoon, because we did get that remake. I mean, it'd be nice to get a sequel. Kind of get us some of those Dreamcast era games kind of back, modernized, maybe sequel. And I think we could see a return, because as much as Rare was driven into the ground, we've seen some decent stuff from Microsoft. Like, I don't know, I feel like Microsoft is slowly, and I mean slowly, trying to dig its way back up. I mean, okay. Anyway, I'll be quiet about my Sega fanboying, but
Dude, Sega, I don't know, dude. I totally agree. I totally agree with the Sonic thing. Though I'm totally messing with you. Kisses,
Oh, yeah, I know.
privilege.
I love you, BB. I love you.
Thank you. But no, I don't know. This entire like Sega thing is just going to be very interesting to watch. If it's true. I don't know. I think it'll be very interesting. Good for them though. Microsoft is a good like platform to start at. Just it'll be very different.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of potential there. There's also a lot of potential for a major letdown if absolutely nothing happens and it's just a run-of-the-mill press conference. But, you know, hoping for the best. This podcast is always hoping for a new Vector Man sequel. So I think we should get on to our next subject. It's probably going to be our final subject for the night. We've kind of run a bit long today, but this is one that I do think we would be remiss to not talk about. The Valorant beta just finished, I think, yesterday or the day before that. And the official release of Valorant comes on the 2nd. Bunch of different things happened during the beta. I think pretty much everyone here probably played the beta of Valorant, and so obviously we all have opinions there. But also kind of looking to the future of the game and thinking about what's going to be changed on release. So, who wants to take their first stab at the Valorant news?
I'll let somebody else because I have my own opinions.
And we do have opinions
unless
on this
nobody
podcast.
else wants to.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh?
I think Dallin, you were kind of the biggest Valorant
Nobody
fan,
has opinions on this podcast. It's all run through me.
We're a hype man.
No, so okay, quick thing. I didn't actually play Valorant. Can somebody quickly just explain me about it?
I mean, so who in here played the beta? Because I played
did.
a little bit of it. Okay.
I did.
Okay. So, I mean,
Do you want me? I can start with a quick rundown of what the game is and my opinion,
Yeah,
and kind of what we know so far.
yeah,
So,
you go ahead and start us off.
Valorant is a competitive first-person shooter. It takes a lot of different team elements from a bunch of different games and kind of puts them all into one. It's got a very similar champion system to Overwatch or other MOBA-like games. Each character has their own specific abilities with specific keybinds. The one game mode that we had during the closed beta was basically taking an object to a location, planting it, and defending. So there was both an attacking team and a defending team. And then it plays very similarly. I've seen the comparison a lot to CSGO. So if you've ever played that, it plays very similarly to that. And so we had the closed beta. It was a few weeks where we got to try out different champions, try out the system, and it gave Riot Games an opportunity to fine-tune some balancing and just game issues that they were having. It seemed to be incredibly well received. It was the most viewed game on Twitch for the entirety of the closed beta, probably mostly because of the system for getting a beta key, which was to watch a stream until you got a key. So that definitely helped its numbers, but it was also very well received, so it got a lot of attention there. And so there were a few bugs that Riot worked through during the beta, and some bugs still going into the end of the beta. But overall, very well received. A lot of people are looking forward to the full release in just a couple of days. I personally very much enjoyed the game. I thought I thought they pretty much nailed everything that they were going for. I think the champions are very cool. I think the competitive elements work for the most part. There are a few balancing issues that I think they just need to work on. But I think overall a very fun game. I'm glad that it's being released. It's very fun to play with friends. Not as much fun to play by yourself, but that's to be assumed for pretty much any team esport game. But yeah, overall, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I'm very much looking forward to the full release on June 2nd. We do know we're getting more champions, more game modes, obviously a lot of fixes. So there's a bunch of stuff to look forward to in just a few days.
Or is it me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So funny that we bring up this Valorant thing. I actually got into Overwatch again recently. God fucking help me. But so I took some time and I went and played some played some Valorant, and holy shit, I take back every negative thing that I said about this game. Community is gonna remind me a lot of Overwatch and kind of the toxicity it can be.
You cut out, bud, or at least I can't hear you.
Yeah, you there,
Or is that
Camden?
me? Cam?
Fuck my mic.
It seems like he died.
Ah,
Can
shit.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Okay.
God, I fucking hate myself.
So sorry, man.
Anyway, okay. I'm broke. So we're gonna talk like out loud. Okay, so I got back into Overwatch and I was just trying to play like a team-based shooter to get ready for Valorant because I was like, oh, this is very interesting, very cool game. I take back every negative thing I said about this game. Like, I am super into it, and I think that the game has a lot of competitive value. And to have a game that's like, like Overwatch, like
Stinky.
CS:GO, huh? Oh, what happened? Oh, sorry, I thought.
Stinky.
Shut up. All right. Overwatch is fun to an extent. Yeah, I think as I said earlier,
No,
to kinda have
it is a well-designed game. It's just a shame
But
they
they-
completely ignored
they-
the community.
destroyed the community, and the game is god awful now. It's fucking awful, but still. Moving away from how they fucked up Overwatch, let's talk about how good Valorant is. Because honestly, I think that the only issue with the game is that there's going to be a very toxic community, which most shooters have. And the thing with toxicity in games is like you kind of have to, in a shooter community, you kind of have to have hard skin anyway. But I think looking at the game from an eyes glance, now that the beta is finally over, it's going to be the new like big competitive shooting game, and I'm super into it. I think the hero base are like really really cool. I think every like idea aspect, the way the game plays, movement, so cool. And I think that they're going to do a really good job. I think that game developers are Riot, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Riot is going to do a really, really good job and not make the mistake that Blizzard made with Overwatch midway through the game. I have really, really high hopes. I'm really hoping that what I'm saying right now is not going to come and bite me in the ass. But I feel like Riot is going to do an amazing, amazing job with this game. It has so much potential. Looks really cool. Holy shit. Just wow, what a good game. I think that as a person who's not going to play it competitively personally, I know somebody who's going to play it competitively. I know people who really enjoy the game casually. It's for everyone. I think that if you don't play it competitively, you're gonna kind of get some shit for it because you're not gonna, you're not taking the game as seriously as people who are going to play the game competitively. But I think that it's very much a game that is worth playing and worth. I think that after the beta, and not only that is like the way that you had to get the beta key was so cool. It's just I don't know what the way they handled Valorant. Amazing, so cool. Anyway, I'll stop geeking over this game. I'll let somebody else talk.
Yeah, I'll keep my things on Valorant short. I really liked it. I do think that it's definitely, if you come at it from an Overwatch perspective, you're in for a rude awakening. It's more CS:GO than it is Overwatch. I'd only played Overwatch before playing it. I had a good time, loved Valorant. The only things I don't like uh, that I played, and I haven't played it in a while, so excuse me if these things have been fixed. Um, I know this is kind of a CS:GO thing that they crossed over, but having to stand still to shoot, just it wasn't my thing. I'm a big guy for trying to out move players, and when I see someone shooting at me, I try to move out of the way. I don't know, it didn't feel natural for me. That could just be my player instincts kind of going against game design. And then my biggest thing were that games were really long. They were like you could get like an hour and only get through one game of Valorant, and I don't know that felt I felt tired after playing like 2 full games, and I felt like, okay, that's a little bit. I feel like I should be able to play more Valorant than this in a short amount of time. But honestly, besides those 2 things, I think the game's looking good. Riot has a pretty good history with games and whatnot. They need to fix their anti cheat. That thing basically is a Chinese spy bot, which is not good. But other than that, the game itself is fun. I'm excited for its full release. Had a good time with it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's staying free, right?
Yeah, it's going to continue to be free. There
Hell
will
yeah.
be a Fortnite style battle pass. And I did mention earlier that they announced that there were going to be a few new things on launch, and they actually have already revealed the new agent, as they're called, for Valorant for the full release. Her name is Reyna. She is a essentially like a feast or famine type character. You get a lot of rewards for getting kills, and you absolutely suck if you don't get kills. So she's cool, and they have revealed a new map, which looks real cool. And then they announced the new battle pass, which is probably going to have things like skins for both agents and weapons, and potentially other cosmetic type things. I don't think there will be agents on the battle pass. I don't know if that's been confirmed or denied, but I think that would be very silly on Riot's part. But I'm curious to see how many agents they end up releasing, if it's going to be more similar to Overwatch in terms of their agent release cycle, or if there's going to end up being 10,000 champion or agents like in Riot's other game, League of Legends, which has so many champions to play, and the whole system for that is its own complex system. But Camden, you said you wanted to say something real quick.
Sorry, Mike. I'm so bad. Okay, yeah. Speaking of the battle pass system, I think that's a really cool. Considering you said the game, just so I heard correctly, I'm paying attention fully. I promise. What is the game's going to be free, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that it's perfect to add a battle pass system, and I hope it handles it really well. I'm not gonna lie, Fortnite did their battle pass system really well. It's not a necessity to the game. It's just cosmetics and stuff. So I think it's really, really cool that we're getting a system like that, I guess. That's what I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. I think a battle pass is really cool. It's a really cool system that adds more to the game. This new agent looks sick. I suck at the game, so I'm not going to be good at characters that have to rely on kills. So, fuck yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, I was just gonna say I have been while you're talking, I was looking some stuff up. So yeah, agent unlocks will be in the same contract system as they were for the beta. They will not be a part of the battle pass, so no concern there in terms of having to pay money to get different agents, which I think is definitely a positive. Basically, the battle pass will give you agent skins, gun skins, and then radiant points, which is, I guess, going to be the system for buying other skins. Yeah, I mean, so a bunch of just, simple cosmetic things, cool things there that, we've kind of come to expect from these free-to-play games. It's very nice to see that Riot isn't going down the route of pay to win. I think for some people that was probably a concern, just because of how the League of Legends, having to buy champions in League. But, we'll I guess continue to monitor how Riot chooses to handle that. There's always the possibility that if the game continues, they might change that. But I have faith in Riot. I think they really want this game to succeed. But yeah, I don't think there's been any confirmation about whether or not there will be a console release. I personally don't see it happening initially. And honestly, with how the game is, I'd be curious to see if they ever release it for PS4, but always a possibility. They said Riot has said that they're open to other Riot has said that they're open to other platforms, but haven't started developing ports. So, that's always a possibility. But yeah, that's enough for me. Keelhn, you wanted to say something about Valorant?
Yeah, so I think Valorant is an interesting beast because I'm honestly surprised that it's. I'm not necessarily surprised, like, on a quality aspect that it's done so well. I'm surprised that it's done so well given the nature of the game. I think there's a few things that stand out to me that make it surprising to me that it's done as well as it has. Namely optimization. The game is not amazingly optimized at all, by any standards. And having played the game a good amount and seeing it on low end and high end systems at max and minimum settings, they claim that the game is extremely well optimized, but I think that it's just an excuse for them to have dinged out on graphics a little bit. Because while the game does look nice and it has a good art style, I think there's a lot that they left off in terms of graphical options, especially in modern, FPS releases. It looks like a better CS:GO, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is unfortunate that if it's going to look like that it doesn't run as well as it possibly could. And then the other front is that CS:GO is kind of a closed off community to an extent. You don't see nearly as many people that mostly play other genres of games hopping into CS:GO. That was never really much of a thing, but then I'm surprised at how much of a wide audience this game has attracted, and that might be because it's being developed by Riot, who has made League and TFT and now Runeterra and Valorant. It's possible that they, just because of the nature of what they've created before and the fact that it's free, that might be why it has such a large audience, but that did surprise me. And I do think that Battle Pass system is definitely a fine choice for monetization on a free-to-play game. Obviously, you can do Battle Passes right and wrong. On the wrong side, you'd have almost every other first-person shooter that features a Battle Pass, like Call of Duty or Destiny. It's almost ridiculous that there's a Battle Pass in the first place because you already have to pay for the game. But then you can do things like Amazon has done with their brand new game, Crucible, where just for playing the game on release, like closer to the start of the game, I think it's within like the first preseason, they give you enough credits. It's already a free-to-play game, and they give you enough of the in-game currency to buy the Battle Pass. And if you keep up with the Battle Pass for the entire season, you will always be able to buy the next one and then some. So I think monetization is helpful for the game. But obviously, if it's too predatory, then it can be a problem.
Yeah, I think the future of Valorant is going to be something that is going to be very closely watched. I'm very hopeful for Valorant. I've had a ton of fun playing it, and I do think Riot has a lot of credibility when it comes to maintaining their fan bases. League of Legends has been a very successful game for a really long time. Teamfight Tactics has been a very successful game upon launch, and people don't seem to hate Legends of Runeterra. I mean, it's a relatively new game, so I mean, obviously, we're still seeing how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I think Riot has a lot of credibility. It was very interesting to see them announce a first-person shooter, but they've seemed to have handled it really well, at least thus far. And so I have a lot of hope for them going into the future. I don't know if there will be the same level of fall off as we've seen in other sort of viral Twitch games, but yeah, I'm really hopeful for it. I've really enjoyed playing it. I'm definitely sure I will enjoy playing it after launch. But yeah, I'm very excited to see it going forward. Does anyone else have any last remarks on Valorant before we?
Well, speaking of Runeterra, Riot, please fix one-turn kills. That's all that game is right now. It's just you're doing fine, and then all of a sudden, either you've won in one turn or you've lost in one turn. It's an enjoyable style of play for any turn-based game.
What, you don't like getting all 5 pieces of Exodia and winning in one turn?
That's basically what that
Bro,
game is.
That is.
Sometimes you just, in
Kinda
one
be
turn, summon 9 people onto the board and completely wipe your enemy. One move. It's very fun. Or you get one person that is completely that is just the unstoppable Exodia. Then you type in game chat, obliterate, and your opponent ceases to exist.
Yeah, that's definitely probably a less fun game system. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Valorant's super exciting, and we'll continue to follow that on this podcast. And
My grandfather's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.
speaking
I
of,
summon the unstoppable Exodia.
well, speaking of the,
Obliterate.
God damn it, Keelhn.
Oh my god.
Speaking of unstoppable, that is one thing that this podcast is not. We do have to finish for the night, but we are so grateful to everyone who has listened tonight. We're grateful to everyone who listens to both the live show and the pre-recorded, the replays on YouTube. This is always a very fun thing for us to do every week or every other week or whenever we get to do it. Obviously, a lot of scheduling conflicts can put the show on hold for a little while, but we're always excited when we get to do it again. We do love talking about gaming news, and we just love hanging out with each other. So we love the
Even
opportunity.
though we hate each other sometimes.
Yeah, we do hang out with each other sometimes.
I was gonna
outside
say,
of work.
No, we hate each other. No, we hate each other.
Oh, we hate each
Oh,
other.
we all.
Yeah, we do.
We all hate each other.
actively dislike all of you.
You thought that we were
Yeah,
I fucking hate
that's fair.
Keelhn. I fucking hate
Yeah.
Keelhn.
Well, fine. We
We're
might
gonna
not
invite
come. We might not
you.
come
Oh,
back
wait.
next
Okay.
week. So
Yeah,
whatever.
shit, I need an editor.
If there is a next week, haha.
Haha, funny.
Joke's on you. My end of the world scenario goes off tomorrow. Sorry,
Oh,
boys.
no.
There's not gonna be
You
an
have
Earth.
been on that Mayan calendar.
Dude, the Mayans were right, man. The world ended in 2012. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
This is the new world.
Remember
Yeah,
that
we're in the
time
new age.
2012 the movie came out?
Oh my god.
Well, anyways,
Yeah, I apologize.
yeah. So, like I said, we enjoy doing this podcast every week. We are ending the podcast for a night. We do have a few quick things to shout out. We do have a Discord server. The link to that is in the description of the video. We also have a Twitter account. The link to that is in the description as well. Make sure to join our Discord so you can talk to us and kind of see maybe some of the behind the scenes stuff and just, kind of chat with us in general. Follow us on Twitter so you can get updates whenever something happens with the channel, whether we are starting early, starting late, not doing it that week, or any of the other projects that we do have planned for the future of the channel. And below all of those links, you can find our personal links. Several of us have YouTube channels or Twitch channels or just social media where you can follow us for our dumb jokes and dumb opinions. And yeah, all of that stuff can be found in the description. And right above the description, you can find the like button and subscribe. We do appreciate it when you do both of those things. It helps the channel as a whole get more recognition. Obviously, YouTube's algorithm is something that has been discussed ad nauseum online, and so I don't need to explain why those things are positive, but they are positive, and we do appreciate it when you do it. But yeah, I mean, even more so than that, we appreciate everyone who comments, whether in the live chat or in the replays, and just we appreciate that you watch the channel. We love doing this, and we love that you want to see us talk about all of the dumb things that we talk about.
Exactly right.
But with all of that being said, I think that wraps us up this week for the Masks Off podcast. Everyone, if you'd like to say goodbye, we'll end the stream.
Alrighty, goodbye.
Bye.
Fun.
All right, see you next
Have a good
time.
night.
Peace.
And we are out.